Good everybody, what's up? It is not Dion, it is Robett. This is Dion's show. Dion, introduce the show.
Welcome to Old Rope. A little bit of old rope, some advice from some old guys, or bearded guys at least.
Bro, I'm impressed. Straight away, I just want to say, Dion, welcome to the whānau, my bro. It's all good.
Let's maybe also start by giving Jimbo there on the bottom right props for. I see someone's bought a ring light and a better microphone over this last things. The one guy who's actually paid in media.
I did have this mic the first week actually. In fact, I haven't got my earpiece in, so this is did I not use the light last time?
No, you're looking. It's like one of those. You're about to get filtery on the gram or something.
I have to say too, Jimbo, it looks like you've been using a bit of maybe Triumph and Disaster product. Your skin's looking very luscious.
No, it's because he doesn't look like he's captured.
This is as good as it gets. It's all downhill after this. Once I breathe out, I did start lockdown by doing yoga, push-ups, eating nice raw food, and now I've gone to pretty much chocolate milk, sleeping in, and oven chips, which are bloody good. I tell you, how good.
They are.
Crinkle ones are the ones, aren't they?
I don't know if everyone's had a chance to look at the 4 points that Dion would like to cover in today's show. Dion, would you like me to read out your 4 points, or how would you like to structure this next?
Just hit us with something, Robett. Yeah,
okay.
I mean, they're not the only 4 points. I mean, Bruce had some good ideas there too.
So kind.
So let's maybe start with the main thing. Jimbo, what do you have to say about that? Oh, that's right. You're not even at your chair. Okay, cool. Good chat. How about the big news? You know the big news. Okay, Bruce, let us off. What's this going to mean? 4-3. Go on.
Yeah, we're just actually. That's why I just came from a meeting to discuss that in regards to how our business is approaching it. I'm pleased, to be honest with you. I think we've to be coming out of sort of 3.5 weeks and sort of aiming for stepping down to 3 is exciting. For my first go-to actually would be for small businesses, thinking that there's a lot of businesses now that think of the building sector as stuff that can actually start to kickstart and get back into some form of flow. I'm not sure what normality looks like, but certainly some sort of flow. And I think that's going to make a huge difference. I think if this kept dragging on sort of 5, 6, 7 weeks, if you saw the Treasury report last week that came out as well, or this week, sorry, the consequences of a longer lockdown at 4 was looking a lot more, I guess, scary. So yeah, I don't know about you, Dion, with a small business, how you feel with that, as to feeling positive.
Yeah, well, I mean, we sort of have been semi-essential because we sell cleansers and scrubs and things like that. So there was a bit of happening online, which we were able to benefit from for the last week or so, which has definitely stemmed the tide. And I think the main move for me seems to be that we've done that online for pretty much all online businesses, which just seems to make sense. You've just got to step ourselves, get this economy wheel spinning back up again. But we won't. I also think we've learned a few different ways of operating, which I don't think there'll be much resistance to going to 3 and sort of not going straight back into work. I think people are quite happy with that. But I think getting back on and getting things going, getting the wheels turning is sort of super important.
Yeah, I agree. I think that is a key thing, isn't it? It's not. I mean, you've got to think like a 4, but we have some restrictions that are taken down to enable some businesses to kickstart up. And I think, it seems like the smart approach at this stage. As a non,
yeah. And I think that was my question really for this show. Really was, I was on a call a couple of days ago, and the moderator, she actually read out a poem. It was about which was what stimulated the idea. But she was basically asking the question of, are we at the beginning, the middle, or the end? And I thought it was a really great, and she had this poem which basically expressed the idea more eloquently than I have. But it's a really important question, because I think as I challenge myself thinking about business, but also sort of personally within the household, I think it's easy to think that we're coming to the end, but I don't know that that's the case at all.
No.
And if anything, maybe we're at the start.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point.
So I just throw that out there because I was reading another article where someone was sort of, I think it was actually John Key, had come out and said, look, he felt that in a weird way, the easy part, the government had done the easy part, which was the lockdown.
Right.
And the harder part will be coming out of it, getting things back going, fixing, keeping everybody safe as we wind things back up. Well, I thought that was quite an insightful one from a guy who's been there before. But I thought, I can see the same things on a micro level with my own business. It's like almost the crisis management was the easy part in a way. Now getting everyone back onto new ways of working and connecting people in different ways and building that all up. I think keeping the mojo going or building the mojo back up, getting people to goals maybe slightly.
I reckon today's announcement by Jacinda would have had pretty good ratings. Everyone basically listening in to see whether they're allowed to do stuff. Surfers happy. Drive-throughs are open. Yeah! And so everybody's one of the great moments in New Zealand history. It'll be
KFC.
Yeah. KFC. We will fight them on the beaches. All these great sort of speeches in political history and the drive-throughs are open, people. So at least that gives some certainty. But I was talking to a friend of mine who runs a business and it's a restaurant. It's in Ponsonby Food Court, great place, and she's not sure that she can reopen because she says just relying on deliveries, it's just going to cost too much just to fire everything up and get staff and all that sort of thing, and then just play this waiting game for Uber Eats. So there's a lot of people who are still they're going to be left in limbo for a long time.
It's the next couple of weeks that'll make, I guess, as we sort of climb through this and seeing what that looks like over the next couple of weeks. This is the first step, which is great. And I think politically, again, I'm not no political expert, okay? Just put a disclaimer there. But, man, this is kind of where the rubber hits the road in some ways, isn't it? I think you can just see the opposition and others starting to flare up, comparing us to Australia, et cetera, et cetera. Something had to be done, but it's got to be the right thing, right? But, yeah, drive-throughs, that's I didn't know that, so I'll write that down.
I think
Thanks, Jimbo.
The politics is a bit tiring because everything is a bit political though as well. Like the whole drive that we have to be first in the world for everything from the government as well. That's political as well. It's sort of like a little bit tiring from both sides. I think if we all just drop it, we've got a good decision. We've made some good decisions. Now we need to make good, smart decisions to get out of here and get things going again. I think the country would benefit from it, but I think personally, I don't know, I'd be grateful as well. The politics of it is tiring, right?
It's going to be interesting for places where there've been clusters. Like I was looking at Matamata, a great Waikato town, and that was affected. I think it was getting up to 80 people. But when a town is pretty much labelled as a cluster, then what happens? The people are going to say, let's just call in for a coffee in Matamata. They're just going to blast through the place. But the flip side could be that the Matamata Rugby Club could be an early bet to win the Waikato Club Championship because everyone's going to default and just go, no, you guys, you'll be fine. So they'll end up top of the table, semi-final, another default, final. It's all over. Congratulations to them.
Or they'll play a game at 2 meters apart.
Yeah, they could. Social distancing rugby.
That's pretty much how I defended on the rugby field anyway. So
this is true.
Yeah. I played the clarinet on the side, so I was good.
We know.
I was speaking to a mate of mine today who's got a bunch of small businesses actually, quite a few of them, and it was interesting. I sort of rang him up just to take a note out of this. What we're doing here with this old rope is kind of just rang up and said, "Mate, how you doing?" It was a pastoral call. It wasn't. There was no. It was really just, how are you doing? And I was really surprised at his response because I expected him to go down the whole path of, geez, business is hard and, this is tricky for me and et cetera, which you would normally expect. And there is a bit of that. But he went straight to a place of, this is making me think about life differently and my priorities. And he's got, I would guess, 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 sort of small businesses around New Zealand. Yeah. And Yeah, I was quite. I don't know. I was quite.
Hit you different.
I liked it. I liked that he was thinking that way. He wasn't being sort of unrealistic and reflective. This is hurting him, but it's sort of taken him to a place where he's going, I've been on this rat race running 100 miles an hour every single day, maybe not being the best boss, maybe not doing this. I actually wonder whether I could do this differently. And this is what I'm sort of taking away from this at the moment. And I thought for a guy, I just thought it was really refreshing.
We interviewed John Maynard, who's the CEO of Wilderness Rentals, camper vans, and he was saying, I was like, but at the end of this, he goes, what I'm actually going to miss the most is my 4 o'clock scooter ride with my kid. And it was just like, it just reset so much for not just commerce, but actually for things which you wouldn't usually exactly think of, We've got some trolling has already begun. Brett Maber would like to say, much better lineup this week, Dion, and also that they'll all be heading to the home of the mega cow, Morrinsville.
He's right. Brett is absolutely right. They're going to go to the mega cow. Jacinda's hometown, of course, there'll be like a shrine there for her after all her efforts. And I wouldn't be surprised. I just do feel actually sorry for a place like Matamata because in the end it gets labelled, it gets named and shamed. It's just an unfortunate event. But this is the whole thing. People will start to say we can't go there because of the COVID. There is going to be a slight sort of dystopian feel to driving around New Zealand,
One thing that Matamata's always had that, though.
Yeah, there is, pretty much. Buddy. Who stops there? Well, I have stopped in Matamata, although I do find that their antique shops are a little bit overpriced for my liking. It's second-hand tat. Come on, guys.
And pies are on the high side as well, just quietly.
Oh, yeah, but there is a great store and there is a great bakery right in the middle of Matamata. Oh, what's it called? It starts with K, I think. Yeah, it has the biggest. Yeah, we've all been there. Yeah.
I'm going to jump to the second. We've got some type of formality. We've actually, Dion has organically segued us through the first part. Are we at the beginning, middle, end? Well done, Dion. The second one is New Zealand growing up / evolving politically. What made you say that, Dion? Because the unification of intent?
I've never had so many political conversations in my life, mildly political. And I feel like, I think on the first one that we spoke, the first time a couple of weeks ago, maybe it was my own idea that in my conversations, I sort of had this idea that maybe we could lower the gloves politically and actually talk more sort of philosophically around the politics of it. But I think that we're being forced, much like Bruce's friend, looking at our lifestyles, looking at what's important. And I think individually we're all asking these questions of ourselves. And I think that flows on to what politics do I stand for? What beliefs do I stand for? How important is government in my life versus my own individuality and all of those different things. And I think those are questions that overseas, say in America, it's much more at the forefront of people's minds and conversations. And not so much here. There's an old saying in New Zealand, never talk about, racing, politics and religion or whatever, or something like that. And and I feel like it's a bit more open now to say, hey, well, where do we stand on all this politically?
I agree with you, man. I think that's what I found so refreshing about my friend's conversation is just that time with the kids. It's even myself. I've been sort of thinking, how much I've sort of taken those things for granted. I think, and just by slowing down a little bit, because it's forced us to slow down. It's forced us to think. It's like I remember speaking to someone once. It's like a puddle of water, right? And you keep sticking your foot in it. It's always murky, but when you take your foot out, the mud settles and suddenly you get clarity. I'm not saying I've had a Zen moment there, Jimbo, so don't get worried. But but I guess what I'm saying to you is that I think a lot of people have sort of thought, man, actually, I'm exceptionally wealthy because we've got our health and our kids, I need to probably start thinking about how I make them more of a priority in my life rather than, because I'm, I don't know. It seemed like, I don't know about you guys, but freaking treadmill 4 weeks ago, just running like mad, like a duck on water.
Years.
I agree with that. I think I've appreciated just the slow down, take stock, and And I mean, I still try to do the yoga, and it's not really working for me. But Simply Live Well Yoga, I should give a plug there. Pretty good 9 a.m. lesson every morning. And the thing about it though is having that time to think and breathe a little bit and do some chores and maybe even tidy your
It took you 3
shocking
weeks
lounge.
to do your room, Jimbo.
Look, is that you actually it gives yourself a chance to probably, I guess, look at your priorities, think about really what could happen next. I mean, I work in the media. So many people have lost jobs, been asked to take a pay cut. We're no different. Crowd goes wild. So the thing is, you just have to be prepared for that, but appreciate what you do have. And what you do have is I've got my daughter here. I hardly ever see her. I just deliver her food, but she's here and she's happy.
And she's safe and healthy.
Yeah, I've made banana bread and meatloaf using the same tin, but not at the same time. These are things that you sort of start to really branch out a bit. So yeah, there has been time to think. I agree with you, Bruiser. I think that you actually do need to take it's been good to take a little step back, but any further and people are just going to start going crazy.
Yeah, there's a very fine line between that and insanity. Yeah.
Yeah.
We did yoga today as a family, actually, at 11 o'clock. We took the yoga with Adrienne, which I'm not sure was entirely appropriate for my 13-year-old son for some reason.
Oh, no.
What was it? Oh, God. Saying, or is it like a nap, or what is it?
He concentrated a lot better than the other two did. It was quite interesting just to see as a group. But last night I had probably the best night I've had with my family for ages, and
nice.
It was all just around. We lit the fire for the first time. Maybe needlessly. It was not really freezing, but we just sort of thought, we'll have a ceremonial fire lighting for the winter.
Yeah.
And before we knew it, I just started playing some playlists, and I went into sort of my sort of 90s sort of playlist sort of thing, and
pre-match bangers.
I didn't realize how much I'd infiltrated my children's childhood, because it just sort of flowed on to about 2.5 hours of this playlist of everyone playing their songs, which was really my songs. And we just had this great night as a family. And I think it was sort of like one of those things, it needed a whole lot of downtime to arrive at a night like that. It was like a long holiday point. And I think that, it was a nice thing. But
so here's the challenge. Here's the challenge, Dion, and all of us, or anyone who's listening, is kind of going, if you went to level 1 now, how quick would you forget that? Because at the end of the day, I mean, my kids are older now, right? So they're in their 20s, but I know I don't look it. It's amazing, isn't it? This is a Triumph Disaster product, makes me look so young. But I think at the end of the day, that's what counts, right? I mean, your kids, you want them buying you the best room in the retirement village at the end of the day, don't you? I mean, that's you want to build those relationships.
A little epiphany I've had probably is I remember being sledged when I played cricket by one of the South Africans, guy Daryl Cullinan, and I was captain.
Stop that guy.
Yeah, I was captain for a short time, and as captain, I was doing a lot of talking, and I was trying to G the team up. And then he got like 150 or something. And as we were walking off, he just said, "Oh, you're a talking Nash." And I was like, "Oh, it really hurt," And I was like, "Oh, it got me." And then but I sort of felt that with my children, I've been a bit of a talker and not a doer. And what I've managed in here, because we're all working from home, I've been able to be a doer, and they've sort of seen me just working as opposed to just telling. And I think that's been a bit of a learning too, is just from a parenting perspective, is actually just doing, showing a bit more, or just showing by example or doing has been a great way of sort of educating.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where that came from, but anyway, there's probably just a chance to tell you that I've been sledged by South African.
Are you campaigning to be voted Father of the Year or something? I mean, this is kind of getting a little bit crazy out there.
No.
I mean,
okay.
Last time I went there was he bought Indian takeaway, and there wasn't even enough for his guest, and they were like, it was just kind of embarrassing. All there was red wine, which I was happy with. But yeah, okay.
No,
fine.
Dion, you've got a point there. You are not the first alpha male who's talked to me recently about perspective changing of their attention being more to those closer to them,
Right.
which is
But I still give you guys the challenge, or anyone listening, is how do you hang on to that? Because the sad thing, I think, you could see this has been confronting to us, obviously, confronting to others probably way worse than me in regards to how they've been confronted by this. But if you have these epiphanies and have these times, is how do you grasp onto that and take something really good out of something that's been a challenge? So I sound very philosophical here, but you know what I'm trying to say. If you can take those nuggets out and they can then start to define who you are going forward, then it kind of makes this all worth it.
Oh, Pastor Bruce coming through with the
There you
fire.
go. Boom.
Okay.
Yeah, nice. The one thing I would say is that you've, with your kids, and you got 3 great kids. Nashy, Scarlett is 16 now. So when they get to a certain age, you only probably get 3 windows to really have a chat to them sometimes, and really sort of for what you've got to say to sink in, because most of the time they're just eye rolling and going, oh yeah, whatever. So now you'll probably might get those 3 windows might all be during lockdown now because you'll get the chance. You'll actually see them.
You might lose the dick status. You're a dick.
Yeah.
It's interesting though, like talking about kids, like I was speaking, Amanda and I were speaking to my son last night. Him and his wife were in London. They arrived in London 3 weeks or 4 weeks before lockdown. Welcome to London. And my phone's ringing, wait a sec. And oh man, I was just uber proud. I'm having a phone call with him, and I said, how you doing? And he was struggling a bit, but there was a sense of, but I've got this, mate. I've got this. And it's just like, I don't know. Yeah.
Proud
just made
moment.
me just, yeah, it is. And it's, I don't know. I'm philosophical today.
I took a lot of it from your comments in the first episode of this that I wrote, Bruce. I wrote down a bunch of mates that I hadn't connected with for some time, and I've contacted them all. And what a rewarding exercise that was.
Good on you. I didn't get a call, but that's all right.
Yeah, you mate. That's different.
Unfortunately, I'd already done that before you suggested it, Bruce, and I'm still waiting to get replies. It's obviously let a few relationships go.
Slide.
And
That's the 90-day mate.
Still waiting.
But I was going to say, I got a call from my father. My father's 89 and turns 90 this year. So he's
cool.
He's sitting up north there, and he's hard of hearing, and he's still got his faculties, but he doesn't speak, doesn't communicate much. He never did anyway, as a grumpy old farmer. So it's only rescinded from that sort of low threshold anyway. And, but I was on the phone with Mum earlier in the week, and she said, "Oh, your father's come over to talk to you," and I was like, "Oh, that's strange." And all he came over to say was ask how it was and ask how's the business going. And it was funny, like only 2 simple questions, but it was just wonderful, to hear that, and I was just able to nice little thing. But I think some not probably just sharing a nice moment with Dad, but I think there's a lot of those nice things happening, and now we've got to, as you say, try to carry some of that forward. I think my larger point really in terms of the headline was, politically, can we sort of have a more evolved conversation? Where does this country stand politically? We've always been quite socialist, and capitalism has never been a completely clean word here. I suspect on some levels, but I think there's a bigger conversation too around all of that going forward. I think that capitalism seems to have to evolve at this point, because if we're going to maintain the lifestyle that we want, then capitalism or the drive towards capitalism and achievement and all of that somehow has to soften somewhere to allow that space. And I think that's a big
okay.
We've got text has come through from Davey. It says, "Bruce is the man." Well done. The next one says, "Hey,
Thanks,
Dion,
Davey.
what colour is the
too.
couch?"
Where's the couch? Because look at,
I'm very beige today.
We just can't see just see a head on top of a couch.
No.
Yes.
Hey, here's another thing I thought of today. So I'm going to give a shout out to this book here. Okay, can you see that? Got that right?
Kiwi Spitfire Ace Jet, right?
Yeah.
Sounds
So
like
a staff member gave this to me the other day, and this is a story about her grandfather. And I've been reading it. It's been perfect book for right now. This guy, I don't know if you guys knew how many guys went to World War II as Spitfire pilots. I mean, these guys they were amazing, like what they did in the war. And in regards to their skills and the whole Kiwi ingenuity, you can just imagine it, right? So this is his life story. This is his memoir. Anyway, I'm at the stage. The last couple of days got at the stage where he got shot down in France, and he had to land the Spitfire on a field, basically with one wheel. And you can just imagine typical Kiwi, right? And then he goes and tries to hide with the French people, but then he said that his survival kit included everything except a beret, and so therefore this volunteer he stood out. Anyway, cut a long story short, this guy gets into the same prison as where the Great Escape happens. And I got the stage where he invented this sort of sheet that he camoed so he could crawl under the sheet to the line to break through and try and escape from this prison, right? And he got stuck in the cooler for 90 days. So here he is in the cooler. So that's because of the Geneva Convention. It did have a bed and stuff like that, but he's in a concrete room in winter in Germany, 90 days, basically sloppy soup, bed, not 90 days. Like we've done, how many? We've done 21, but I'm sitting on a lovely couch here, not beige, grey, but and I've got a nice Syrah sitting somewhere. I get to lie with my beautiful wife every night.
Oh, here we go. Come on.
But all I'm trying to say, I don't know, it's giving me some perspective.
I was going to say that my one of my prized possessions is my grandfather's soldier's handbook from World War II, and it's basically got all these different languages. So wherever you land in different territories, you can communicate. So it's got "don't shoot" in German and all these kinds of different things. Right. And so weirdly, as a reference book, quite often if I'm stuck for, say a French word, I'll go and get the soldier's handbook because it's got some good basics there compared to what you learn at school, which is, pull the curtain and all this kind of stuff. It's like, it's got some real stuff that you need in it when you're in a jam.
Yeah. But I think the context, like these guys, man, he was telling about how he took off one day in the clouds and then none of the instruments worked. So he had to figure out by sticking his head out the airplane to basically land it in the clouds with oil all over his face. And I don't know. It's just again another gentle reminder that yes, this is tough. I'm not trying to downplay it at all. But fuck, we're lucky. Sorry,
great
we're lucky.
Feedback, Jimbo. Hey, What do you think? What do you say there, Jimbo? Oh man, yeah, great chat.
Yeah.
I will. There's a famous cricketer called Keith Miller, and he's old. He flew Spitfires in World War II. Aussie guy. And anyway, I met him in England at the John Paul Getty's house, which is this millionaire's house. He's got this prime cricket ground, and we were playing there. And we went to lunch, and I got sat with this guy, Keith Miller, who was an Australian legend. And he scored, back in the 50s, he scored 100 at Lord's not long after the World War II had ended. And the interviewer sort of says something like, so, you must have felt the pressure out there as you got close to your 100. And he goes, pressure, son. That's a Messerschmitt up your arm.
Jimbo, have you found the book, mate?
Yeah, I've got the book. Yeah,
Bonjour.
Shit. Okay, hold on.
Yeah, and all the different. So that's the
that is
awesome.
And
look
at the quality, and it's
actually got the bloody hell, I'm coming wrong. And so that's it's a lot of the phrases are just like which way to the town and all those kinds of things. But I'm pretty sure there's a lie down and don't shoot and all these kind of like
Is there one in there that says have you got a beret, spare beret?
Yes, spare beret. It doesn't have that page. So that's probably why
what I've loved,
he didn't make it through. Unfortunately, the beret line was not there.
But I guess what I'm saying is that I guess where I take hope in this, and this is a conversation I had with this guy today, is that, geez, we're a tenacious bunch, us Kiwis. Like, I know we do this tall poppy stuff, and that really bugs the hell out of me. But our tenacity and our willpower and our willingness to make something out of nothing is phenomenal, and I think that's what we got to start to dive into. And
creative resilience.
Yeah, and then what I loved about when we spoke a couple of weeks ago was kind of like, this rich country, rich resources, uber talent, and we have this desire to always be overseas, when actually if we just focused inwardly and looked at what we can create here and who we are as a nation, and in particular our skill sets, right? I don't know. That to me would be a massive bonus coming out of this. Just that whole hyperlocal sort of ecosystem industry that becomes this thing called New Zealand, Aotearoa.
So I was just going to add, my grandfather did survive the war, but
sorry.
Yeah, so you got the wrong end of the stick there. Didn't make it through, but through enemy lines. However, can you tell me, what does this mean? Aidez-moi à creuser une tranchée.
Are the drive-through open?
Correct. Yeah.
Brilliant.
The drive-throughs are open. Take me to the nearest KFC. No, it's help me dig a trench, which is those are the sort of things that you learn, and
Very
you can
helpful,
only get that from the Soldier's Handbook.
Did you see the guy down the line who's dug a trench? He's dug a bomb shelter.
Yes.
Was in the one video. That made me. I just wanted to. I try. It's the first time I've ever wanted to go on and make a comment on one of those platforms, and just say you're a hero, mate. That's the type of Kiwi we need out
what
there.
What did he do?
Him and he's an ex-army boy, and I forget. I'm not sure where he was, but they've dug this massive, big underground, like a trench, like a World War II bunker.
Nice.
The kids have all stepped out there and made it. He was just like, he spoke to how hard it was to get his 13-year-old son to help keep working, and how he thought he'd, and also just how hard it is to go from like one that you can sit in to one that you can stand in, how much extra work it was.
One thing I was going to say, just to get away from trenches, because I've kind of diverted the thing, it's a bit like a trench, was you're talking about New Zealand evolving, and it is kind of at that point where it felt quite nice, where there was bipartisan or multi-partisan sort of like unity in New Zealand for a while there. Right now, there's a few sort of noises of discontent from the right or whatever, but seeing how the most important person really isn't necessarily Jacinda, but actually Bloomfield, because he's the guy who's having to sort of like say, these are the facts, this is what we need to do. Obviously, they're taking his advice. And I think it's been quite cool, because we've got a guy and Jacinda who have combined and really also, the only person who's acted like a dick has been the health minister, and so he's no longer required. So if there was a movie, I was thinking it would be quite nice to have those two, Jacinda and Ashley, single, and obviously when it came time to breach each other's bubble, so to speak, in that scene where they sort of suddenly get closer and closer, if then finally they do, and I think they kick each other's feet or something like that. Is that what happens next? Yeah, they do a special COVID handshake.
Think of it, people who probably don't want to see that movie, James.
Quite a good movie, mate. It's like it's rating. It's tits off right now.
I was just thinking. I went to the place of who plays who. Is it Brad Pitt and I don't know, Jennifer Aniston or something like that.
Point number 3. We're going
this is a good
point number 3.
Those two go together again? I'm not sure.
Jimbo, you can now. Sorry, mate. You can now.
So what was number 3?
Quote. I won't say who said it. I'm not missing sport at all. Anyone
Dion.
else?
Dion said it. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Did I say that out loud? Mate, yeah. That's a weird one, eh? Because normally I'd be like chasing my beloved Hurricanes and just watching every single game right to the nth degree. I don't know.
I don't want to put James out of a job, but honestly, it hasn't bothered me one iota. And
of course it doesn't.
and the only other thing that's happened is I've supplemented the lack of sport with watching Christian Cullen videos, which has just been magnificent. Yeah. It's
Express.
It's ruined any rugby to be played after this point for me, because you just realise the brilliance of the man.
Yeah.
I'm missing it, obviously, but I haven't watched a lot of old school sport. Just the stuff that I usually head down a few YouTube rabbit holes anyway. But as far as sport now, watching Australia, they've carried on with their horse racing all the way through COVID. They're really determined to get this rugby league thing off the ground quite early in the piece. So again, where is there Ashley Bloomfield when they need him? They could take some advice on this, because it just seems to be a little bit rushed, given that everybody else is still going through national disasters.
I've just quickly realised something. I've been trying to figure it out for the entire show.
Well,
What is
we're
the
not live?
rustle? No, it's your beard, Bruce. When you turn right, it goes on the microphone. I've been trying to figure it out for flipping ages. I'm like, where is this? And I've been like, that's why I've been like looking around trying to find it. And then you just did. I'm like, it's your flipping beard.
It's taken off. Like, it's just, this isolation has been like fertilizer. It's just.
How do you grow the darker parts of the beard?
Yeah, look, there's a skill in this. I'm not going to lie to you. There's a real skill. So it is. You have to partition parts of it and expose certain parts to more sun than other parts on a rotation basis. Yeah, and then you use this purple shampoo that your wife uses. That's really, really expensive. That takes the brassiness and the yellowness out of the beard. So it's complex. We haven't probably got time for it today.
Back to sport, team.
What about Nash's mic as well, by the way? Nash, is your mic up against a cushion that's a wine-stained cushion on the couch?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Is that better, Robett? If it's not going to bang, there you go.
It's better. Who cares? It's fine. Back to the sport piece. Do you feel government will step in to save sport?
I think sport should step in to save sport, and I think that they should evolve. And I think that there needs to be. It's like all of our businesses. Like I honestly think, thinking on reflection, my business will be better at the end of all this. Make no mistake, it's been awful, and I'm still worried about different aspects of it. But if I survive it, I'll be much stronger, and business will be a better business, and in the end, the customer will have a better experience, I believe.
Well, I asked because did you read the spin-off article that Duncan's crew put out today with the transcripts of all the shit from the competing media companies with the government?
No.
Gold. It is gold. And basically it's the government asking all the media, and it's got a screenshot of all the hitters just all lined up, all against each other. And you just, Bruce, you will flip and love it. Go through and you scope the bits of, I want to just do like a whole post on exactly all. It's amazing if you're into media at all. But basically, throughout it, some of the people asking for obviously government support because media is important, blah, 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 all the rest of it. But the same thing, I'm sure that's going to be coming for sport next, which will be, there's going to be a similar thing with the NSOs, with Sport New Zealand, with the government to have some type of a chat. But the difference is, I'm imagining from the media side anyway, is a big part of the issue is a lot of the model was broken pre-COVID anyway. That wasn't the thing that tipped it. And I just would hope that the government understands certain parts of society are important and just handle it the right way, not really, drinking the Kool-Aid of those who potentially get the loudest. Because I think the models, to your point, Dion, need to support itself first and then fuel on top of it. But yeah.
But to your point, I just think across the board, this is the danger that the government has got ahead of it, is doing this in an even-handed way, not just for sport, but for businesses, but for everywhere, and setting it up in such a way that it's not just the loudest and the biggest bullies that get all the goods and get all the help and get all the support, but actually it's done on an even-handed and on a meritocracy almost as well of some level. Like it's actually, I don't know how they pick their way through it, but and also not put people on life support. I think you've just got to get people back on their own feet as much as you can. I don't know, I'm going off piece a little bit, but I sort of tried to have a look at the tax relief side that's coming in for small businesses and that, and I was like, I couldn't really realize why they were doing that so early. It just doesn't feel like it's necessary at this point. And if anything, it just feels like it opens it up for people to plan to sort of like to for their own benefit, which is not really in the spirit of what we need at this point. I think we need as businesses getting back on their feet, independent of the government. And if you don't need the government, you shouldn't be really dipping into it. But I don't know. I just feel there's a whole lot of issues potentially coming up with people.
Well, it's exactly the point. I was just going to say,
sorry.
Bruce, I'll let you jump. Is the same copy-paste conversation that One Vertical's having, that was started with media. It will be sport, and then even today we're talking to Tim Alp, CEO of Juicy Group, is saying, you know, I'm not going to be surprised if the government looks into the tourism ecosystem, if that's such a massive part of it. Does the government look to potentially bankroll a bunch of acquisitions of these small mom and pop tourism things, if that's going to be a big piece of the country? At what point, if it's going sport, media, tourism, hospitality, flipping, you name it, services all the way down, where's that balance off? Because if it becomes copy paste too much and it's too much of a handbook, then all of a sudden you're just going to, you know, put a bunch of weaker businesses on life support when they should have had more, you know, strategic thinking to have a business model that actually works in the modern age, right? I'm really interested to watch how that thing plays out. And to point down that the loudest just doesn't get the win.
Yeah.
Sorry, Breezer.
I think the big thing was how long the lockdown was going to be, right? So that was the thing that was going to determine. I kind of agree with you there, Dion. Is kind of, you know, maybe it's a bit early. You know, we're sort of coming up to the end of, well, we've just turned over week 3, which was last night, effectively, and we're coming to week 4 with clarity that we're stepping down, right? So there are things we're starting to move, which is great. And you could argue, and I'm no economist, but you know, there's a sense that we've ripped the plaster off hard. Therefore, we're not going to be in this sort of the belief is that we're not going to be in this state of flux for a long time, as long as some other countries that have probably been a bit softer. Look, I don't think anyone really knows, to be honest with you. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is that I agree, if you can get out of this on your own feet and start to rebuild based on the values and the ideas and the creativity that you had before, then that's a cool thing. That's my first point. I guess my second point, though, would be, and something we've been talking a lot about at Yellow, is how do we, well, it's not a matter of how we're going to come out and talk about this, is how do New Zealanders kickstart New Zealand? Like what is our responsibility to supporting local? What is our responsibility to helping your good old coffee shop down the road to get off the ground again? How do we start to really think about our local businesses and go, actually, as a nation, the buyers are just as important as the sellers, and how do we sort of take on that sort of thinking to go, you know what, we're going to help each other out and kickstart this thing ourselves. Now, some businesses won't survive, and you could even argue some of them may have never should never have survived because, you know, they might have the wrong product, service, etc. But I think it's a cool challenge to us, right? It's like, kind of, how do you support? You know, if you're a local manufacturer like yourself, right, Dion? You know, you've come up with an idea in New Zealand, you've developed a product in New Zealand, etc., etc. I think we should be thinking, how do we kickstart your business, because it's a New Zealand Inc. business. I think it's a cool challenge to us.
Well, I think New Zealand's a difficult market. It's a great market to start a business, but it's a very hard, because we're so small.
Scale.
It's a hard market to get any scale, right? And to really build a big business. So it's a great test market almost. But a lot of people, you know, and I wrestle with this myself, is, are you making a business or are you making a trap for yourself in a way? You know,
that's
like,
right.
And it's like, and so I think for my business, I need the global world. I need to be able to send my products to see and online, but a lot of that can be transitioned online. But my local audience, my local Kiwi support is absolutely essential. I'm not winning and loved here, then I've got nothing really to sell overseas, you know.
Yeah.
And how I've built up my brand. So it's absolutely essential. But I also understand I'm going to have to evolve how I'm doing things here, and I'm going to have to produce a better product and a better service coming out of this than I was in it, because it's going to be more competitive, or people are going to be more question whether they need things. The dollar's going to be harder to get. So no matter what, I'm going to have to get better. But you know, I always, and a little thing that I've always wondered with sort of cafes, for example, I travel to Italy, and you sit in Italy, you can get if you stand at a cafe in Italy, you pay $2 for your coffee, your long black or whatever. And if you sit down, you pay $4. And for ages, it's always bugged me that you walk into a cafe and it's up to $5 now for bloody coffee, whether you take away, whether you eat it in or not. And it's like, maybe there's some thinking around those types of things. You know, like, you just stand and get a $2 coffee and walk and on you go. But those types of things actually will bring people into, you know, I think we've got too used to some things.
Experience-based pricing, right?
Yeah.
That's a good point, I reckon.
But even if you look at your businesses that you're running, I mean, what you've just explained probably is something that, say, sport or whoever's been in a hiatus needs to take on board. So in the case of sport really, it is a popularity contest, and just like your products, Nashy, you know exactly how they're rating. And sport now, weirdly, Jacinda and Ashley, the two lovebirds, have given New Zealand perhaps the best chance to actually host sport. And imagine if the only rugby that worldwide is the NPC or whatever that Super Rugby Derby competition they're thinking of, that will actually go around the world in a market that's starved, of that kind of thing. But then for the other sports, this is where the popularity contest is tough. I've always argued, like, you can compare your, the wages of the All Blacks. It's a bit like Lord. She's popular. She's the big ticket. She's global. That's the big brand. That's why she gets paid the big bucks. Is she a better musician than my sister, who's an opera singer, who's bloody talented? Well, I don't know, but they're not in the same ballpark earnings wise, this is where sport is probably going to find out really who its friends are, and the sponsors who really do care. So if you think about a sport like rowing, who gives us a lot of glory and joy around Olympic time, well, they've got sponsors. I mean, I don't need to list them, but you probably see sponsors like Banklink and all these people that love rowing. Well, are they still going to be there for them and help fund them? Because those Olympic rowers who are national heroes, they get paid less than the receptionist in actual New Zealand rowing, the person. So they're going down training every day at 6 in the morning and 4 times a day, and they're getting paid less than the staff in the admin staff in the building. That's the way it is. I mean, we're talking about Mahe Drysdale, who is the Ronaldo of rowing, and he's on less than minimum wage probably.
So I've got a perfect segue, James. I'm real keen to get your take on this. So if you would have seen last week, Dana White UFC came out and he's like, I'm going to bring back fighting this weekend, and basically he had done a deal with a Indian reservation in California that he was going to do it out, which was outside the jurisdiction for federal yada yada yada. Basically got handbraked from the CEO of both Disney and ESPN that was going to run it for a bunch of reasons, but he is building Fight Island as we speak, which will be a fly in, fly out lockdown zone. They're building the infrastructure, TV rights, blah blah, and it's going to pop, right? And then I was talking with, I forget who it was the other day, talking about, well, if any new people coming into New Zealand are going to get on this lockdown for 2 weeks, and if there's a bunch of existing bricks and mortar infrastructure, wouldn't it potentially make sense to think of, say, if, argument's sake, Auckland became sports city of the world?
Exactly.
Fly in, 2-week quarantine, instead of having the 19 different hotels and motels, which would where people would stay, you would actually go into quarantine training camp, and at the end of that 2 weeks, you would then have your event, whether it be the Yugoslavian soccer Premier League or whatever, but you fly in, lockdown, just like training camp, and all of a sudden we've got production facilities which can happen. Crowds don't necessarily need to be there, but the big ticket reason why they've been talking about in the NBA, they were talking about putting the NBA teams on cruise ships to play, because if they hit 70% of the players' bargaining agreement, they then get the TV rights deal for the TV guys to get paid. So yeah. All of these contracts for all the players in sports are done on TV rights, and if they can get the games to happen, everyone gets paid, because at the moment, if they don't hit that thing, no one gets shit. And so I guess my question was, with all that thinking, do you think it's possible the same way, we're looking at physical bricks and mortar infrastructure get used for different verticals, we could potentially rebrand New Zealand? Not only, I mean, that would get planes flying here, because they would hire the New Zealand planes to go pick them up. We get an extension from hotels and motels. And do you think there's a sporting local to global opportunity where global sports could happen, and that actually becomes a huge wheel? Is that you know the ins of this shit? And I've talked to a couple of people about, I was like, you transfer the universities into these isolation pods, just exactly like they're doing with the 19 different hotels that the government's already said. What's your thoughts? Has there been talk around this type of shit, or am I tripping?
No, I mean, I think they should be talking about it. I've been operating in isolation. I'm not sure exactly what, say, for example, Sky is thinking, but I know that they'll be keen for any window of opportunity. So Fight Island, for starters, I think is a silly idea. I mean, you might as well just have it in Gisborne, where I think there was 1 case of COVID, right? So, there's your Fight Island. You need somewhere. To be honest, you actually need a pretty good local hospital. I'm sure. Gizzy, Fight Island already is known as Fight Island. Is that right? Is that the joke? I don't know. the thing is like Fight Peninsula. So there or Rotorua, I think there were 10 or 12 cases in that entire lakes area. So there are places in New Zealand where there's probably hotels and everything else where you could actually set things up, infrastructure for that. So look, I would love that to be a discussion that people are having. To be honest, Jacinda would have to sign off on this, because if you think about the travel and people coming to New Zealand, there's going to be some pretty stringent conditions for anyone who wants to come down here and smack someone in the face.
But that's the 2-week lockdown. And if you look at the NFL, they go into that 3-week training camp where they literally go into a hotel for 3 weeks lockdown with just the team to do it. But if we're saying there's a 2-week isolation anyway that's going to be mandatory, you would just plug that directly in. You'd timestamp it out at different little hotels.
I think the space you're jumping into, Robett, is similar to what they do in the film production space, right? So line production. Yeah. So and New Zealand's famous for it, right? Americans and other groups come down to New Zealand because they want a certain aspect of New Zealand that is unique, or special, or whatever. And their money comes in, all the assets everything comes into this country, and we deliver an experience and a solution, and then they fly back out again. And
seagull sport.
Yeah, but that's what film production companies have been doing for years and years and years. And film companies, right, is that you come to us, we're going to give you, we have this uniqueness about us. And I think it might not only be sport, but it could be other things too. Just thinking about how we sort of pivot and move into that space. And the challenge is, as you said, is the 2-week lockdown or the mandatory stand down period, which they're exploring overseas. Because if you aren't playing the game, you're not making the money.
Ironically, though, it seems to be that the sport in New Zealand, if they are going to survive and flourish, they need to connect with overseas parts, and be that, whether it's rowing, state rowing, for example. Like, do we need to be bringing in Yale and bloody universities from the States into?
That's the point.
Building training facilities, off seasons, and all that sort of stuff. But I think it's the opposite of what we're not going to be able to redo it here out of our small base. We're going to actually have to go the opposite, which is counterintuitive to what's going on, and go overseas and find the incomes and those people and bring them in. And I feel like rugby, the big sport in New Zealand's got to do the same. I feel like Japan's sitting up there. It's got what is it, 3rd or 4th biggest economy in the world. If we got Toyota and 3 or 4, Sony or whoever it is, rugby teams playing now down here, or somehow we've got to bring those All Blacks back in. And we spoke about it last week. It seems to me we spit out the big names too quickly out of our sort of ecosystem for sport. I still want to hear about all of the big names who played in the last 2 World Cups who are still playing rugby around the world. The Dan Carter, we haven't had enough of him yet.
Japan's a good example, Dion, around rugby, isn't it? I mean, look at how they have, in the last 10 years, might even not be that long, 5 years, how they've actually become so synonymous with rugby. I don't know if I've got the dates right, but it just seems to be more of a mecca. World Cup helps, of course, but am I reading that right? It just seems to be such a...
They're not a joke like at the start, right? I mean, the other boys will jump into it, but I remember when I was like, what? But the same thing happened with Chinese gymnasts when they came into professional snowboarding. These flipping 13-year-old washed-up gymnasts were becoming snowboarders. Everyone's like, what? And then a couple of years later, they're like dominating,
Anyway, yeah.
You probably know better, but Japan, I think it's a huge rugby nation at this point. So but still, probably on just pure numbers, it's still probably really significant, right? So it's a big economy. So, there's a chance to build a connection there. It's the same. I just think, like, with green technologies and things, we should be reaching out to, like, Elon Musk or Google or someone like that and saying, hey, come down and trade driverless cars here, or bring those people to New Zealand and set them up here somehow.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
Who makes those calls, like, literally? Because this doesn't seem like a dumb idea.
Probably Ashley Bloomfield post this gig.
Good old Ash.
He's got a movie. He's got to be scripting, isn't he?
Mate,
Sorry,
life
Nash,
is-
I missed a lot of what you said then about but was your mic cutting out? I don't know. I was imagining that, but the as far as Japan's concerned, like anyway, as far as Japan's concerned, it's one of those places where you go for your classic swan song, golden handshake type thing, because and that's not a disgusting term. It's just like they go there because they know the season is short. It's easier on their bodies. They can play another 5 seasons. Whereas if you go to one of those Northern Hemisphere, like I know it's Northern Hemisphere, European nation of Ireland, England, and France, you could absolutely thrash yourself all season, and then you're toast. And so for the families as well, they really enjoy the Japanese lifestyle. So it's got that whole thing of like, you get the same amount of money playing for less, and then you're one flight away from home, and it's just all those sorts of things. It's like all the planets are aligned for more people to go to Japan, but they are getting, like you say, Robett, it's like bigger and bigger names. Oh no, sorry, Bruiser, you're saying this. Yeah, it's just Japan just really seems to be like one of the first options, isn't it? Like where are they going? You're almost surprised if they don't have that as an option.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I think what we're all sort of skirting around is that it feels like we're only scratching the surface of what we could do in our ecosystem if we thought of New Zealand as a bubble, as a think. I hate using the word think tank because it's overused, but you know what I'm trying to say. Like, I think your Elon Musk idea is perfect. It's kind of going, you want to come to the greenest country to try this thing and see what it's really, really about. Well, we can categorically say we're the greenest country, or wherever it might be.
It's the brain of back in business.
This is how we would host you, and this is what it would look like. And line production, again, I keep coming back to that. It's a perfect example. A friend of mine who owns Film Construction, film company, they do an amazing job with place, and what they do is that when the Americans come here, it's just the best thing, the best experience. It's experiential for them, but then they walk away with a great product for their market, and the money they bring in to our country, and that supports tourism, and that supports local cafes and all that sort of stuff.
And they prepay that shit too.
Yeah, I mean, you've worked in the space, Robett. I mean, it's a good example. So you kind of go, if that's a model that works, and then how could you replicate or make that go across different types of industries, right? And the other thing I love about Japan, like I haven't been to Japan, and it's on I was planning to in July, but that's obviously off the books at the moment. But my son's just been there, and there's something about Japan that I've always been fascinated by, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, but it just seems to be such a self-sufficient ecosystem. That you go back to the days when we were, well, maybe when I was a lad, if it wasn't Japanese, you didn't buy it in the electronic world. So I know that's spread out, but they still seem to be such a self-efficient bubble, I guess if that's the right word. You know what I'm trying to say? Is that they build for themselves. They're very, very focused on what they do and what they're really, really good at, and they stick at it, and they develop, and they move, and they change, and copy.
Yep.
Yeah. There's some lessons in that for us,
If you could channel basically the way that business over in Japan sort of really wants to be part of sport here, that would actually that would help. Like that's if you look at Japan, for example, their rugby teams, I know are pretty much this company that they're sort of like a shop window for their company. So you think the company, but they're really, and there's others, so there's obvious ones like Toshiba, and then there's another place that's just a mobile phone, like the equivalent of Vodafone over there, and they have a team, and there's all these different things that have to happen. So if you lose a game, it's considered good manners to be in the dressing room and cry in front of the CEO when he's in there consoling you, saying, "Don't worry about it." You literally should be crying. Nash, I'm sure you would have shed a few tears in a few dressing rooms in your time.
Yeah. Hey, Robett, there's a good question on here, mate. I'm going to throw it to the team. Not that I want to do your job, but
no. Sorry, I might have missed it. Go.
It's from Keith Delmer. And it says, "What can business owners do to join together to help get things kick-started?" Any ideas?
I'll have an instant straightaway one that's clearly not happening. Is cross-industry real-time comms at the top level with opportunities and problems that they're all having simultaneously. That is not happening so far from what I've seen in the back.
So talking about where they're at and what their challenges are.
Across sport, like mixed sport with electronics, with media, with transportation, logistics, like that level across it from business owners, not government, that I've seen. Yeah, like a perfect one example was talking to Tim Alp from CEO of Juicy today. He was saying, we were just bantering around ideas. I was saying, you could simply link up with, maybe do you partner with Z Energy, and then all of a sudden you've got camper vans and you've got thing. Well, what else can you do in those different spaces? Well, you're talking about, gas and then, rental vehicles. Okay, cool. Well, what other things can you get layer on top? Do you media, yada, yada, yada. So that initial one, and my biggest fear at the end of this is there isn't 10,000, I think I maybe said last time, 10,000 people try to solve the same problem individually in their lane, instead of realizing if you just think laterally, there's someone else potentially with the same problem. Like right now, like Tim's talking about how can they use their unused accommodation potentially for women's refuge with Safe Night?
Right.
How do you start to go, lateral thinking? So that would be my kickoff, I guess, idea.
I think it's going to be some businesses are more readily workable to swap notes and join with than others, and I think there is a natural tendency, I think, with business people tend to be quite paranoid on some level, or business owners maybe tend to be quite paranoid. I think that's an obstacle to sharing and to collaborating, and I think that's something that would need to be worked on really hard going forward. You've actually got to and sort of almost put it in the try things and risk it a bit basket, because collaboration's got to be useful at some level, but I don't think we've been particularly good at it. I don't think small businesses are particularly good at it generally, I don't think.
But there's also going to be the next wave down, which is about to happen, which is everyone's been yes, that's probably maybe phase 3, but there's lockdown, we're locked in, holy shit, now it's going to reset, everyone's enjoying the fam. We're about to then go back out, and there's going to be like, we're trying to get back into it, but no one's talking about the gnarly level of, and we talked about it quickly before, Dion, is that the businesses who have been needing to restructure, if not close down, that are going to happen in the next 60 days, that employees that have been naive about within those organizations that thinking, I've had my thing, now it's all good. It's like, no, you've come back and now there's an 80% drop in the business. That business can't actually exist. So there's that whole second wave of redundancies, layoffs, 100%. And then on top of that, there's going to be the tension between big gnarly roll-ups in different verticals just to try and save jobs, but realizing that the people who are doing that for, yes, I mean, obviously they commercially, if they've got enough cash flow to roll it out over the long end, it's going to win, but they can't be seen as predators. They need to be seen as saviors, because without that cash flow to get through that thing, even more jobs will go. So I think we'll get to that point after people feel they're safe. At the moment, I still feel, maybe to your initial question, Dion, is I think they probably will still feel it's the beginning of something, not the end. Naive feels at the end. The actual smart ones know it's the beginning. So that would be my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think mental health will play a big part too. Yeah. I think that's the big one. I think lag effect is, you're talking about lag effect there, Robett, and I agree. I think that's going to happen. Obviously, as businesses sort of come out and face the reality of, what is this business about? What is it? We're looking at it at Yellow. We're kind of going, the business we thought we were 4.5 weeks ago, conceivably is quite different come next week. And so we have to be open to listening to that and willing to pivot if we need to. So that's the first thing. But I think the mental health piece is the piece that I think
it's going to drop gnarlier, right, Bruce?
I just don't feel like we're talking about it enough, actually, to be honest with you.
So just quickly, that first one is like, boom, we're locked down, holy shit. No, we're safe. The second drop, for those that haven't seen it, is going to go down twice as hard, because then they would have thought they're free again. It's like, nah, man, like there's another wave coming, and you're exactly right, Bruce. No one is talking about that, and I can see it coming. I can flip and see it.
Well, it's sort of like that old analogy of when the music stops, right? And there's a certain amount of seats left. And I think everyone's assuming at the moment that the seats are all still there, but the reality of it is we don't know how many seats are still left,
No.
I think you're describing a game called Musical Chairs. It's got a name. Nash. I thought, is he talking about the Titanic? No. Oh, Musical Chairs. Yeah, that's the one.
going to say this might be for next week's because we've been going an hour, and I thought you brought it nicely back to are we at the beginning, the middle, of the end, Robett, and I thought maybe we're at the end. And so,
well, I feel like we've left on a bit of a more of a downer. I feel we needed. Okay, Jimbo, this is your forte. Give us a bit of rah rah.
Go Nashy. Oh, me? Oh shit!
Yeah, you're the funniest.
Reality check. I was like all upbeat for most of the conversation, and then he's just hit me with some realness, and I'm
sorry,
like,
team.
Oh, is the musical chairs call gonna ruin your evening? Don't let it do that. Like, no, I think basically, what Bruce is saying is so true that we've got to really be mindful of the effect that it has on people. Like, I know I've spent half the week phoning friends just to make sure they're okay because the media's just been absolutely hammered. Now,
Smashed.
part of the reason why you hear about those jobs being lost is because they are the media and they've been reported on them. But I'm sure there's a lot of other industries getting completely sort of laid waste right now. So this is it. I mean, it's a bit like Jurassic Park out there. We're all basically dodging the old T-Rex. You know, we're like extras in that movie, and so really, it's just about kind of like worrying about what you can on any given day. The fact there's a bit of a finish line in sight is kind of exciting. If I don't know who wasn't excited about today's announcement at 1:00, what we can possibly do in a few days, and all those businesses that have got a chance. I think like locally or in the regions, I'm hoping that places like the Chamber of Commerce and Rotary clubs and all those places where businesses do sort of gather can kind of help each other. I worry about the big city. The big city, not everyone's going to be able to phone up Michael Barnett or whatever. Is it Michael Barnett from the Chamber of Commerce? Yeah, the guy with the bow tie who comes out and has a little chat to everybody. It's not that easy for you guys, and I sort of think that you can get lost in a place like Auckland, where I'm sure there's that's where a lot of the job losses have occurred, especially in the media. Pretty much all of them.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, my 2 cents worth is it might cost you a little bit more to buy locally. I would challenge some of our local resellers to think about like the coffee scenario that you said, Dion, is kind of like, if you come in and get a flat white, we'll charge you $3. We're still making money on it, but I'm looking after you as a local. And therefore I'm more inclined to come and buy a few, right? So, if I was using, again, I'm not paid by you, Dion, but I'm just using it as an example. You could go online and buy hair products or whatever from overseas or whatever it is. But actually, the best thing I could do for New Zealand right now is to buy local, is to actually support the business. Now, it might cost a little bit more. I get that. It shouldn't, but it does from time to time. I get that. But I think if we could all take on a collective responsibility just to think about our purchasing habits over the next couple of months, think about how we buy and purchase, and think about how we support New Zealand Inc. I think more businesses a chance.
Can I just say to add to that, as a business owner, I think it's such a great message, but I also think the response to that is that as a business owner, I'm going to redouble my commitment to make sure that I look after you guys who do that.
That's right.
And I think that we can't just expect that as business owners. I think we have to double down and go, you know what? I'm going to look after. If the local people are going to look after me, and if New Zealanders are going to get behind me and support me, then by gosh, I'm going to do whatever I can to make it the best product and the best service that they're going to get.
Right. So if we can do that, have that beautiful combination of the buyer and the seller, doing that at a hyper-local perspective, stuff importing stuff from overseas. You know what I'm saying? If we just that little attitude.
Hyper-local results.
Yeah, give you an example. A lot of people buy from ASOS in the UK. But there's a great guy who started a business in New Zealand called AS Colour, right? I'm wearing one of his t-shirts now. It's all the blanks. They're actually cheaper than any t-shirt you buy. Beautiful quality. He's a New Zealand business guy called Lawrence, for his surname. They've got stores around that, I'm not trying to do a plug for him, but I'm kind of saying, rather than go and buying some American brand, go and buy Lawrence's shirts, and if you want to put a brand on it, get a felt tip and draw on it. I think that's a simple attitude.
Companies can do that for you professionally too, Bruce.
Well, look at the big R on his hat.
All I heard was drive through KFC Friday. That's all I heard. I'm sorry. All I heard was drive through.
See you guys at Wendy's.
All right.
I'm going to with my kids.
Shot team. Love your work.
Cheers, guys.
Stay safe.
See you, James. Yeah.
Take care, everyone. Nice
Cheers,
chatting. See ya.
Kei te anō.
Bye.